Voice of Indiana County, WCCS 101.1 FM, AM 1160, and WCCSradio.com. It's time for another installment of Martial Law with Marshall Chriswell. And this program intended for informational purposes only. The information does not constitute legal advice. The law is constantly changing, and the information may not be complete or correct depending on the date and your particular legal problem. Each legal problem depends on its individual facts, and different jurisdictions have different laws and regulations. Because of that, you should not act or rely on any information in this segment without seeking the advice of a competent attorney licensed to practice law in your jurisdiction for your particular problem. Say, a guy like Marshall Chriswell, who is enduring the weather along with the rest of us today. Good morning.
Yeah, happy snowy Monday, Todd.
And to you, too. Okay, so I'm going to get this wrong, but you can correct me. Changes for the beneficial filings required for businesses in Pennsylvania. How did I do?
Yeah, that's pretty good. You've got almost half of it right.
Well, you do the other half.
Okay. We've talked about it on this program a little bit before. There's this new law. Well, it's not new at this point. It's a couple years old, but the implementation of it is new. So there's a law called the Corporate Transparency Act that was passed by Congress that essentially requires every business entity in the country, every business that's registered in their state, to file with the federal government, particularly the FinCEN, the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. Mm-hmm. So they want to create this entire huge database of a national database of businesses, and essentially what you have to report is who has the ownership interest and controls those businesses. And ostensibly the reason for that is that they want to fight terrorism and money laundering, and a lot of times those crimes are effectuated through shell companies, LLCs and corporations that are filed essentially for money to pass through, but that perform no actual business activity. Mm-hmm. So they want to know all the different businesses in the country and have that at their fingertips to be able to cross-check and hopefully stop financial crimes. And, of course, there are people that see this as a giant breach of privacy and of constitutional rights.
Yeah. Well, with all of that, of course, it's a tremendous burden on the government to keep all of that in line, because I would assume that there are so many changes, but just establishing the database in the very first place would be difficult. And when you consider from the business owner standpoint, you've got, for instance, where I live, you've got a ton of Amish businesses. You've got all kinds of other business entities that are constantly changing hands. So what are the filings that we need to make, and who, I'm assuming that an attorney would be essential for you to file these documents?
You should certainly consult with your attorney, and I've done the filings for some clients. I've also shown some clients, where to do it, and it's a very one thing that it's a very simple filing, particularly for a small business. Now, for a medium to large size business, certainly you're going to want to have a professional make sure you're doing it right. For small businesses, they've made it pretty easy. You've got one or two owners. You need to put in their contact information and things into the website. It's an online filing. But here's the thing. It was challenged. It's supposed to be an annual filing. It was challenged in multiple states, and there are multiple court cases in various stages of litigation right now. And last we had talked, I think when I talked to Josh, there was an injunction put on the filing requirement by the Fifth Circuit down in Texas, and there was no filing required, and that has changed a couple of times. There have been decisions both ways across the country, but as of right now, there is no filing required. There are appeals pending down in the Fifth Circuit, and there is an appeal that's been filed to the United States Supreme Court. But as of right now, there is no filing required. These would have been due originally on January 1st of this year, would have been the first time you'd ever file this. it got extended to January 13th, which coming up in a week, but that has now been stayed, and there is no filing required. Some people are filing voluntarily. Just they say, well, it's an easy thing to do. I don't care. I'm going to go online and do it. Mm-hmm. And you can absolutely do that. They'll accept voluntary filings, but it's not required right now.
All right, so that's a load probably off the minds of a lot of people, but still the issue remains that uncertainty and the possibility that should the court finally come down and say, yes, it is constitutional or it does pass muster, and therefore you have to get this filing. Does that put a lot of people having to scramble?
It will. I know. The timeline of this. There was on December 23rd. So 2 days before Christmas, there was a decision in Texas that lifted the injunction. And for a moment, it looked like everybody, which is there are about, I think, 15 million businesses in the country that haven't filed this yet. It looked like everybody was going to have to file by January 1st. And then they gave a little reprieve and said, well, do it by the 13th. And so I guess the moral of that is if and when there is a decision that says, okay, this injunction is lifted and everybody's got to file, it's probably going to be pretty quick. It's going to be a couple-week turnaround where you've got to get in there and get these reports filed. And the penalties for not doing so, to the extent that they're enforced, are going to be pretty drastic. It's $500 a day is the potential fine for not having filed, as well as jail time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, and plus, when this happens, everybody's going to be confused, and when they finally do file, you'll probably crash the website.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure. Like I said, there are many millions of businesses that haven't filed yet, and we know technology, and particularly the government and technology, and you're right, it's likely to be a fiasco.
So would it be prudent for a business owner who doesn't want to do it or isn't particularly savvy enough to open up even a simple website and do those sorts of things? Because we know there are people like that.
Sure.
Would it be prudent for them to just say to their attorney, you handle it whenever it becomes legal, I'm putting it in your hands, and they could do that, like make the call today and then forget about it because they know that they have it being handled by you?
Yes, and that would be a good way to handle it. If you are you're planning to comply with the law and you say, well, as soon as I'm required, I'm going to do it. Certainly, you could let your attorney know. And I know in my office, I would make a note of all those folks and say, okay, yeah, if this happens, then we're going to go ahead and get them filed and make sure everybody's compliant.
The idea of laws changing and placing new requirements on businesses, this is just one instance of it. But it could be a very, very scary thing for someone and maybe even prevent them from pursuing a business dream because they just don't feel like they want to handle all of the various things that come regulatory-wise with a business. And that could actually stifle a business climate, couldn't it?
Oh, certainly. The regulatory environment is definitely one thing that business owners have to consider when deciding to start or continue or to move a business, and so luckily these things it is just one more thing. Okay. Mm-hmm. I've had a lot of people say that to me. They're like, well, I guess I don't really care, but it's just one more thing I've got to do. And as a business owner myself, I can definitely relate to that. There's a lot of stuff that you've got to do as a business owner, and I can get that. But it's good to have if you shouldn't let it kill your dream. You shouldn't let it get you down. I mean, have professionals, have a good attorney, have a good accountant. You're only as good as the people that you put around you. And I think one thing I see with small business owners is they really, and I get being cost conscious and all those things, but sometimes people really do try to go it alone and do these things. They're trying to file their own taxes. They're trying to keep up with all this stuff themselves and trying to research every issue that comes up. There are professionals, for a reason, and put good people in place around you so that you can make those decisions more quickly, be more agile, and hopefully, grow to your fullest potential.
Boy, you said it right there. My goodness, if somebody, if somebody's business is, I want to open a fly tying shop and a bait shop, and I don't want to deal with all of this stuff, get yourself an attorney that can handle all of those business things, because there are state regulations, federal regulations, there might even be local regulations you have to adhere to. Let them handle it and go about doing what you love to do.
Exactly.
All right, so how do they do that if they want you to be the person that does all of this filing for them?
You can always give me a call, 724-465-5826. Our office is in the old R&P building, 655 Church Street here in Indiana, or you can go online, check us out at www.westernpalawyer.com.
Beautiful. Marshall, thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks, Todd. You too. Take care.
It is the voice of Indiana County. It's WCCS 101.1 FM, AM 1160, and WCCSradio.com.